The distress call. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Confederation fell silent as Ambassador Zerla stepped onto the speaking platform. Her translucent skin, normally a vibrant azure, had faded to a pale, sickly blue. The 6,000 delegates, from across the peaceful expanse of known space, watched as she struggled to maintain her composure. "Mycoria has fallen," she announced, her melodious voice cracking. "The Voidborn consumed it in less than 2 standard rotations." The chamber erupted in panic. Mycoria was the 7th world lost in 30 cycles. A planet of 15 billion souls. Gone. High. Chancellor Elian rose from his seat, his forearms raised for silence. The ancient Quarian's normally immaculate silver scales were dull with exhaustion. "Show us," he commanded. The central hologram activated, displaying the final transmission from Mycoria. A beautiful azure world with 3 small moons slowly rotated before them. Then darkness began to spread across its surface like spilled ink on fabric. Tendrils of absolute black consumed continents, boiled away oceans, and devoured the atmosphere. Within hours, where a living world once thrived, only a dead blackened husk remained. "The Voidborn grow stronger with each world they consume," said Science Director Nal, her insectoid mandibles clicking in distress. "Our weapons are ineffective. Energy-based attacks are absorbed, making them stronger. Physical projectiles pass through their non-corporeal forms without effect." "The evacuation efforts?" asked a delegate from the Praxian Alliance. "Minimal success," Zerla replied. "We saved perhaps 1% of Mycoria's population. The Voidborn travel faster than our evacuation ships." High Chancellor Elian slowly lowered himself back into his seat. "Our models predict that within 60 cycles, the Voidborn will reach the Central Worlds. The Confederation as we know it will cease to exist." Silence fell over the chamber again, heavier than before. The Galactic Confederation had existed for 12,000 years, 17 species spanning 300 worlds united in peaceful cooperation. They had conquered disease, eliminated hunger, and created a society of unprecedented harmony, a society now facing extinction. "There is one option we have not considered," said Archivist Thorn, his voice barely audible. All eyes turned to the ancient archivist. At nearly 400 years old, Thorn had advised 7 High Chancellors. He had never before spoken during Crisis Council sessions. "Beyond the Outer Rim," Thorn continued, "past the Shroud Nebula, there exists a system with a single inhabited world. A species we have observed but never contacted." High Chancellor Elian leaned forward. "Why have we never made contact?" "Because they are..." Thorn hesitated. "They are classified as Deathworlders." The chamber erupted again, this time in shock and fear. "Silence," commanded Elian. "Archivist Thorn, explain." Thorn activated his personal console, and the central hologram changed to show a blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. "They call it Earth. Its gravity is 1.4 times our standard. Its atmospheric pressure would crush most of our species. It experiences extreme temperature variations and constant catastrophic weather patterns. Its oceans are corrosive. Many of its native species are venomous or carnivorous." The delegates murmured in horror. "And its dominant species, humans, evolved as persistence predators. They are endothermic, with dense musculature and reinforced skeletal structures. Their blood contains iron. Their saliva has antimicrobial properties. They can survive traumatic injuries that would kill any of us instantly." "They sound like monsters," whispered a delegate. "They are not monsters," Thorn corrected. "They are survivors. Their world tried to kill them at every stage of their evolution, and they adapted. They endured. When faced with obstacles, they do not yield. They overcome." "What makes you think these humans would help us?" asked Ambassador Zerla. Thorn's expression softened. "In my centuries of observing them, I've seen that for all their capacity for violence, they possess extraordinary compassion. They risk their lives to save strangers. They mourn their dead. They create beautiful art and music. They dream of finding other intelligent life among the stars. And they wage war, added Nile. Their history is soaked in blood. Yes, admitted Thorne. But they fight fiercest when defending others, and that is exactly what we need now. High Chancellor Elian stared at the image of Earth for a long moment. How would they fight the Voidborn when our weapons have no effect? Humans are innovative, Thorne replied. Where we have sought harmony and stability for millennia, they have faced constant change and disaster. They do not think as we do. They see problems differently. And perhaps most importantly, they understand death in ways we have forgotten. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The Confederation had enjoyed peace for so long that the concept of warfare had become almost abstract. Their defensive technologies had been designed to protect against natural phenomena, not intelligent adversaries. We will vote, Elian finally declared. Shall we contact these humans and request their assistance against the Voidborn threat? The vote was not unanimous, but the outcome was clear. Desperation outweighed fear. 3 days later, a Confederation transmission probe slipped through subspace, aimed at the distant blue-green world. The message was simple. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Confederation. Our worlds are dying. We need your help. Please respond. Colonel Diana Chen stood at rigid attention in the Oval Office as President Martinez read the classified report. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Let me get this straight, the President finally said, looking up from the tablet. Aliens made first contact by asking us to fight their war? Yes, Madam President, Chen replied. The message was received by SETI 3 days ago. We've verified it's not terrestrial in origin. National Security Advisor Jackson cleared his throat. The translation matrix they included with their message made decoding it relatively straightforward. Their Galactic Confederation consists of 17 species across 300 worlds. They're facing extinction from something they call the Voidborn, essentially a sentient cosmic darkness that consumes planets. And they reached out to humanity specifically? Martinez asked. Yes, said General Williams, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Apparently we're known as Deathworlders. Earth's harsh environment, by their standards, forced us to evolve in ways they consider intimidating. They've been watching us? The President's tone sharpened. Long-range observation only. Chen clarified. They've never interfered or made direct contact until now. Martinez stood and walked to the window, looking out at the White House lawn. What do we know about this enemy they're facing? Not much, admitted Jackson. Their transmission included data on the Voidborn, but it's mostly observational. The Confederation has sophisticated science but primitive military technology. They've never needed to develop weapons, until now. And they expect us to succeed where they've failed? Martinez asked. They're desperate, said Chen. Based on their projections, they'll lose their core worlds within months. The President turned back to face the room. Options? General Williams straightened. We've assembled a response team drawing from all branches of the military and scientific community. The Confederation included specifications for their FTL technology and their transmission. Our engineers believe we can adapt it to our ships. Which ships? Asked Martinez. The 7th Fleet, Madam President. 2 carriers, 4 destroyers, 3 cruisers, support vessels, and a full Marine Expeditionary Unit. Approximately 15,000 personnel. Martinez raised an eyebrow. You seem to have already decided our response, General. Not at all, Madam President, but if we're going, we should be prepared. The President sat down heavily. The United Nations Security Council is deadlocked. Russia and China want to send a multinational force. The EU wants to establish diplomatic relations first. Half the world governments haven't even told their populations about the message. Time is a factor, Chen said quietly. According to the Confederation's data, another world with billions of lives will fall while diplomats debate. Martinez was silent for a long moment. If we do this, if humanity reveals itself to the galaxy by sending warships, there's no going back. We'll be the species that responded to a cry for help with a fleet of destroyers. With respect, Madam President, said Chen. That's exactly what they asked for. Admiral James Hernandez stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the final preparations for departure. Through the view screen, he could see the rest of the 7th Fleet in formation, humanity's first interstellar armada. In the 2 months since the Confederation's message, Earth had transformed. The revelation of alien life had initially caused panic, then wonder, and finally resolve. When the full nature of the threat was revealed, an unprecedented global unity emerged. Even traditional adversaries contributed resources and expertise to the mission. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station. "The presidential address is about to begin." Hernandez nodded. "Put it on screen." President Martinez appeared, standing behind a podium in the White House press room. "My fellow citizens of Earth," she began, "today, humanity takes its first steps into the galactic community, not as explorers but as defenders. The Galactic Confederation has asked for our help against an existential threat, and we have answered that call." The camera panned out to show representatives from nations around the world standing behind her. The 7th Fleet carries with it the hopes of 17 alien civilizations and the pride of every nation on Earth. They go to defend not just alien lives, but potentially our own, for if this threat consumes the Confederation, it may one day reach Earth. Hernandez felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 15,000 men and women under his command, venturing into the unknown. "To the brave personnel of the 7th Fleet," the President continued, "you carry with you humanity's greatest virtues, our courage, our compassion, and our unyielding determination. The challenges you face will be unlike anything in human history, but I have full confidence in your ability to overcome them." The President's expression became solemn. "To the peoples of the Galactic Confederation, we have heard your call for aid. We are coming, and we bring with us something you requested, help against a threat you cannot defeat alone." She paused. "What you may not have realized is the form that help would take. You asked for salvation. We are bringing war." The transmission ended, and Hernandez turned to his XO, Commander Lakshmi Patel. "All ships report ready for departure, Admiral," she said. Hernandez took a deep breath. "Send the signal. It's time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do." Throughout the fleet, modified engines hummed to life as they prepared to engage the alien FTL technology. The fate of worlds they had never seen now rested in their hands. The USS Defiant led the way, vanishing into the void with a flash of light. One by one, the rest of the fleet followed, leaving Earth behind and heading toward their first interstellar battle. Humanity had answered the call. Deathworlders unleashed. The Confederation Defense Fleet hung in orbit around Elysium, the jewel of the Outer Rim and home to 2 billion souls. 300 ships formed a protective barrier between the planet and the approaching darkness. It was the largest military force the peace-loving Confederation had assembled in 5,000 years. It wouldn't be enough. On the command deck of the Eternal Harmony, Admiral Ventar watched the Voidborn approach. The massive entity, if it could even be called that, was larger than when it had consumed Mycoria. Each world it devoured added to its mass and power. "Status of evacuation?" Ventar asked, his voice calm despite the situation. 30%. Complete," responded his second-in-command. "At current rates, we can save perhaps half the population before the Voidborn arrives." Ventar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of distress in his species. "And the humans?" "No word, Admiral. Our long-range sensors detect nothing approaching from the Earth vector." Ventar felt a flicker of disappointment, though not surprise. The Confederation had placed its hopes on savages from a death world. Perhaps it had been foolish to expect. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, "multiple subspace ruptures detected. Unknown configuration." The main view screen shifted to show a section of space near Elysium's outermost moon. Flashes of blue-white energy tore open the fabric of reality, and from each rupture emerged a ship of unfamiliar design. Dark, angular vessels with protruding structures that could only be weapons. 17 ships, reported the sensor operator. Power signatures unlike anything in our database. They're moving to intercept the Voidborn. Ventar stared in disbelief. Open communications. The view screen changed to show a human face. The creature's skin was dark brown with short black hair and eyes that reflected the starlight. It wore some kind of uniform with symbols of rank Ventar couldn't interpret. "This is Admiral James Hernandez of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. "Galactic Confederation vessels, please clear the engagement zone. We will handle the Voidborn." Ventar blinked in shock. "Admiral Hernandez, I am Admiral Ventar of the Confederation. You cannot engage the Voidborn directly. Our weapons have no effect. They only make it stronger." The human's mouth curved upward, showing teeth, a gesture that sent instinctive shivers through Ventar's body. Later he would learn this was called a smile. "We brought different weapons," Hernandez replied. "Now please move your ships to a safe distance. Things are about to get messy." "Confederation fleet is withdrawing to minimum safe distance," reported Commander Patel. "They're continuing evacuation operations on the far side of the planet." Admiral Hernandez nodded, studying the tactical display. The Voidborn was even more intimidating in person than it had been in the Confederation's data transmissions. A vast, undulating darkness that seemed to devour light itself, with tendrils extending for thousands of kilometers. "All ships maintain Formation Alpha," Hernandez ordered. "Begin scanning procedures. I want to know what this thing is made of before we start shooting at it." For 10 minutes, the human fleet held position, gathering data while the Voidborn continued its inexorable approach toward Elysium. "Scan results coming in, Admiral," announced Science Officer Dr. Eliza Chen. "It's complex. The Voidborn appears to be a composite entity composed of dark energy, exotic matter, and something akin to a quantum field. Can we hurt it?" Hernandez asked simply. Dr. Chen's expression turned grave. "Conventional weapons won't work. The Confederation was right about that. Energy weapons would just feed it, but..." She hesitated. "The entity seems to maintain its cohesion through a complex network of quantum entanglement. If we could disrupt that network..." "How?" "In theory, a precisely calibrated gravimetric pulse might work. In practice?" Chen shook her head. "We'd need to generate a gravitational distortion strong enough to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself." Commander Patel leaned forward. "The Nova warheads?" Hernandez considered this. The neutrino oscillation vortex array warheads were Earth's most devastating weapons, designed to collapse a star if humanity ever faced an extinction-level threat. Each ship carried one. "That might work," Chen agreed, "but we'd need to detonate it inside the Voidborn's core to disrupt the entire entity." "Meaning someone would have to deliver it manually," Hernandez said quietly. "The Voidborn would consume any unmanned delivery vehicle before it reached the core." A heavy silence fell. "Over the bridge, we need a diversion," Hernandez decided. "Something to keep the Voidborn occupied while we position a delivery team." He turned to tactical. "Lieutenant Park, prepare conventional missile barrage. Gridded pattern. Let's see how it reacts when hit from multiple vectors simultaneously." "Aye. Admiral, missiles ready." "Fire." Hundreds of conventional missiles streaked from the human ships, forming a complex web around the Voidborn. As each missile detonated, the explosions briefly illuminated the darkness, revealing glimpses of the entity's structure. The Voidborn's tendrils lashed out, trying to intercept the missiles, but there were too many, coming from too many directions. "It's slowing," observed Commander Patel. "The missiles aren't causing permanent damage, but they're forcing it to divert resources to defense." "Now we know it can be distracted," Hernandez said. "Dr. Chen, continue your analysis. I want options for a delivery system within the hour." As the human fleet engaged the Voidborn, the Confederation ships watched in astonishment. No species in their history had ever directly challenged the entity. Their strategy had always been evacuation and retreat. "Admiral," called the communications officer. "We're being hailed by the Confederation command ship." Admiral Ventar's face appeared on screen. "What are you doing?" the alien demanded, his multiple eyes wide with alarm. "The Voidborn will only grow stronger from your attacks." "We're gathering tactical data," Hernandez replied calmly, "learning its responses, finding its weaknesses." "There are no weaknesses," Ventar insisted. "We have studied it for years." "With respect, Admiral, you studied it as scientists. We're studying it as warriors." Hernandez cut the transmission and turned to his officers. "Update? The Voidborn is adapting," reported Lieutenant Park. "It's creating some kind of energy shield to deflect our missiles." Dr. Chen looked up from her station. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the entity's response patterns. There's something odd about its behavior. It's not just consuming, it's searching." "Searching for what?" asked Commander Patel. "I don't know yet. But its movements aren't random. It's following some kind of pattern, looking for something specific on each world it encounters." Hernandez considered this. "Could that be a vulnerability we can exploit?" "Possibly," Chen replied. "If we could determine what it's searching for, we might be able to use that as bait." "Continue your analysis, Doctor." Hernandez stood, facing the view screen where the Voidborn loomed larger as it approached. "In the meantime, let's try something new. Tactical, prepare electromagnetic pulse generators. Let's see how it reacts to having its quantum field disrupted." 4 hours later, the senior officers of the 7th Fleet gathered in the Defiance war room. The holographic display showed the Voidborn, now surrounded by the human fleet in a complex formation designed to keep it away from Elysium. So far, their harassment tactics had succeeded in slowing its advance, buying time for the evacuation. "The good news," Dr. Chen began, "is that we've confirmed the Voidborn can be hurt. Our EMP bursts disrupted its cohesion temporarily, and the harm anti-radiation missiles caused localized instabilities in its structure." "The bad news?" asked Hernandez. "It learns incredibly fast. Each weapon is only effective for a short time before it adapts, and it's growing stronger with each engagement, just as the Confederation warned us." Marine Colonel Reyes, commander of the expedition's ground forces, leaned forward. "What about my suggestion? A physical incursion?" The room fell silent. Reyes had proposed what seemed impossible, sending Marines in specialized combat suits directly into the Voidborn to plant explosives at key structural points. "The mortality rate would be extremely high," Dr. Chen said quietly. "But would it work?" pressed Reyes. Chen hesitated. "In theory, yes. Our scans show that the Voidborn's inner structure is more vulnerable than its outer layers. If we could place Nova warheads at these specific coordinates and detonate them simultaneously, the resulting gravitational distortion could tear the entity apart from within." Hernandez studied the display. "How many warheads?" "3. Minimum," Chen replied. "Each, delivered to a precisely calculated position." "I'll need 3 teams," Reyes said immediately. "Each with a backup, 6 in total." Hernandez shook his head. "I can't authorize a mission with 0 survival probability, Colonel. With respect, Admiral, we've run the simulations. With the right approach vector and shielding, there's a narrow window where a team could penetrate, place the warhead, and extract before detonation." Reyes's face was grim, but determined. "It's a suicide mission, yes, but with a glimmer of hope." "Commander," Patel spoke up, "what if we combine approaches? Use the full fleet's firepower as a diversion, focusing on these points where the Voidborn is most sensitive. Meanwhile, Reyes's teams go in through the blind spots we create." Hernandez considered this, then turned to Dr. Chen. "Your analysis, Doctor?" "It's the best chance we've got," she admitted. "The Voidborn is too adaptive for a prolonged engagement. If we're going to stop it, it needs to be a decisive blow." Hernandez was silent for a long moment, weighing the lives of his personnel against the billions on Elysium and the trillions throughout the Confederation. The burden of command had never felt heavier. "Prepare the operation," he finally said. "But I want volunteers only for the insertion teams. No one is ordered on this mission." "Colonel," Reyes stood straight. "You'll have your volunteers, Admiral. My Marines understand what's at stake." As the officers left to prepare their forces, Commander Patel remained behind with Hernandez. "The Confederation is going to witness something they've never seen before," she said quietly. Hernandez nodded. "They asked for help. We're giving them humanity at its most desperate and its most remarkable." Admiral Ventar watched in disbelief as the human ships executed a series of maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. They darted around the Voidborn, firing weapons in complex patterns that kept the entity confused and reactive. "What are they doing?" asked his second-in-command. "I don't know," Ventar admitted. "But whatever it is, it's working." The Eternal Harmony sensors detected unusual energy readings from the Voidborn. It was being forced to continuously adapt, preventing it from focusing its full attention on Elysium. "Admiral," called a sensor operator, "I'm detecting smaller objects launching from the human vessels. They appear to be... Are those transport craft?" Ventar zoomed in on the readings. Small, heavily armored vessels were using the chaos of the battle as cover, slipping through gaps in the Voidborn's defenses. "They're sending people into the entity," he whispered in horror. "Their own people." The concept was almost incomprehensible to the peace-loving Confederation. No species in there. History would consider such a tactic, deliberately sending individuals to their deaths. "Open a channel to their flagship," Ventar ordered. "Immediately." "Charlie team is in position, Admiral," reported Colonel Reyes from the Defiance bridge. "Alpha and Bravo teams are approaching their targets." Hernandez nodded grimly. Each team consisted of 6 Marines in specialized EVA combat suits, carrying a Nova warhead to their designated coordinates within the Voidborn structure. The rest of the fleet maintained a relentless assault, creating blind spots for the teams to exploit. "Admiral?" called the communications officer. "Priority message from the Confederation command ship." "Not now," Hernandez began, but the alien's voice cut through. "Admiral Hernandez, what are you doing?" Ventar's normally melodious voice was sharp with distress. "Your people, they're going into the Voidborn." "That's the mission, Admiral," Hernandez replied, his attention focused on the tactical display. "But here they'll die." Hernandez finally turned to face the alien commander. "Maybe, probably, but they volunteered because they understand what's at stake. That's what humans do when faced with impossible odds. We find a way, whatever the cost." Ventar seemed stunned into silence. "Now, if you'll excuse me," Hernandez continued, "I have 18 brave men and women inside that thing who need my full attention." The communication cut off as Hernandez returned to monitoring the operation. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the teams reported their progress. "Alpha team at waypoint 3, came a static-filled transmission. "Encountering resistance, but proceeding." "Bravo team at target zone. Preparing warhead placement. Charlie team, under attack. 2 casualties. Still advancing." Commander Patel stood beside Hernandez, her knuckles white as she gripped the console. "They're doing it," she whispered. "Against all odds, they're actually doing it." "Alpha team, warhead placed, beginning extraction." "Bravo team, warhead placed, extraction route compromised and finding alternate path." "Charlie team, warhead placed, no survivors, auto sequence engaged." Hernandez closed his eyes briefly. "All fleet vessels begin immediate withdrawal to safe distance, evacuation protocol Omega." As the human ships pulled back from the Voidborn, the Confederation observed in confusion. The entity seemed unaffected, continuing its approach toward Elysium. Then, deep within the Voidborn structure, 3 points of light began to glow. "Detonation in 30 seconds, announced Dr. Chen, her voice tight. "All ships maintain withdrawal velocity." The countdown seemed to last an eternity. At 0 there was no explosion, at least not one visible to the naked eye. Instead, the fabric of space itself seemed to ripple around the Voidborn. The entity contorted, its tendrils thrashing wildly as gravitational forces tore at its quantum structure. "It's working," breathed Dr. Chen, staring at her readings. "The gravitational distortion is disrupting the entanglement patterns." The Voidborn's darkness began to disperse, chunks of its mass separating and dissolving into nothingness. Without the quantum cohesion that bound it together, the entity could not maintain its form. Within minutes, where there had been an unstoppable force of destruction, there was nothing but empty space. Silence fell across the bridge of the Defiant. "Confirm Voidborn status," Hernandez finally ordered. Lieutenant Park checked his sensors. "No trace remaining, Admiral. It's gone." Commander Patel turned to Hernandez. "Extraction teams?" He shook his head slightly. "Alpha Team's shuttle is returning with 2 survivors. The rest—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. In the aftermath, as the human fleet regrouped near Elysium's orbit, the Confederation ships approached cautiously. Admiral Ventar requested permission to come aboard the Defiant, a request Hernandez granted. The alien admiral seemed small and fragile as he stepped onto the human vessel, accompanied by several Confederation officials. They were led to the Defiance conference room where Hernandez and his senior officers awaited. "You destroyed it," Ventar said without preamble. "You did what the entire Confederation could not." "At a cost," Hernandez replied solemnly. "Yes." Ventar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. 16 of your people. 16 individuals who willingly sacrificed themselves for billions they had never met, from species they had never encountered until today. "That's who we are," said Colonel Reyes. "That's what being human means." High Chancellor Elion, who had accompanied Ventar, stepped forward. "When we sent our message to Earth, we asked for help. We did not specify what form that help should take." "You got what you needed," Hernandez said. "Not what you expected." "Indeed." Elion's ancient eyes studied the humans. "You brought war to a threat we could not comprehend. Your first instinct was not to run, but to fight. And you found a way to win when we saw no possibility of victory. The Confederation has existed for 12,000 years in peace." Ventar added. "We had forgotten what it means to face extinction. We had forgotten what it takes to survive at any cost. We would offer your species membership in the Confederation," Elion said, "but I suspect that would not interest you." Hernandez smiled slightly. "Earth will make its own decisions about galactic politics, Chancellor, but I think we'd prefer partnership to membership." "Partnership," Elion repeated, considering the word. "Yes, I believe that would be appropriate." As the meeting concluded and the Confederation officials prepared to depart, Ventar paused. "Before Hernandez, the peoples of the Confederation will remember what happened here," the alien said. "They will remember that when we faced Annihilation, we called for aid, and Deathworlders answered." Hernandez nodded. "Remember something else, too. We didn't just bring destruction. We brought something the Voidborn couldn't understand and couldn't defeat." "What was that?" asked Ventar. "The willingness to sacrifice everything for others, the refusal to accept defeat, the determination to find a way forward no matter how impossible it seems." Hernandez's eyes were steady as he looked at the alien admiral. "That's humanity's gift to the galaxy. Use it wisely." As the Confederation representatives departed, Commander Patel joined Hernandez at the viewport, watching Elysium's blue-green surface below. "So," she said quietly, "we've introduced ourselves to the galactic community by demonstrating our capacity for violence and self-sacrifice in equal measure. Not exactly the first contact scenario anyone imagined," Hernandez agreed. "What happens now?" The Admiral watched as Confederation ships resumed their normal operations around Elysium, a world that would have been lost without humanity's intervention. "Now," he said, "we show them what else we can do. We've shown them humanity at war. It's time to show them humanity at peace." The news was already spreading throughout the Confederation. The Deathworlders had come, they had fought, and they had saved billions of lives. Throughout the galaxy, species who had never known true existential threat began to see the universe differently. They had called for help, unsure what form it would take. They had asked for salvation. The Deathworlders had brought war, and in doing so, they had delivered exactly what was needed.